Hello, welcome to a new Google Sheets and Google Apps script project in Practical Sheets. Here we try to do projects and systems that take advantage of the more advanced functionalities of Google Sheets and Google Apps script. Today we're going to build an event generator using Google Sheets, Google Apps script, and Google Calendar. This could prove useful, for example, for a training program, for a congress, for a seminar where there are a lot of events and you would have to create them manually in Google Calendar. This could be an easy way to create all the meetings in an event with just one button. So here we have some sample data of, let's make, for example, a conference or a training program for Google Sheets. And then I have these 7 events with a date, with an hour, with a location, with a speaker. Then we can include maybe some other things, but for now let's keep this simple, and then we can maybe go a little advanced in further videos. So I've included the date and the hour in the same cell, but then we can separate them if we want to. So what we need to do is first connect with a calendar in Google Calendar. We could create one if we want, but for the time being, we're just gonna use a calendar we've already created in Google Calendar. And then we're going to create the first event, see if it's working, and then we'll replicate it, creating all the events. So we go to Tools, Script Editor, set some zoom. You can see it better. I'm gonna name this function create multiple events. So first, let's create a generic event in Google Calendar, and let's see if everything's working, and then we can go step by step on that. It's as easy as going to Calendar app, create event. Then we can have 3 mandatory arguments and then some options where we can create the location, the guests, and other things. So first, let's create a sample event with a start time and an end time. This could be new date, and the date could be July 1st, 2021 at 10 a.m. And then the end date could be the same, new date, but at 11 a.m. could be. So this is just one line. Let's close the other parentheses, let's save it and run. The first time script is going to ask us some permissions for using our script. We'll just go to advanced and say that we can go to the project and allow. Actually, let's name this project. Okay, so apparently it was successful. Let's go to calendar and check. Here we'll go to July, and here is 10 a.m. of my time, of my zone. This is where I am telling you sometimes where you're dealing with multiple zones, we have to be careful, and maybe we can have just one video where we adjust the hour settings. Here I'm okay, but it's in my time zone. Just a thing to have in mind. So it created. That's great. Now let's go and create one of these events. First, we're going to connect to Google Sheets. Let's create first our worksheet. This is the most used convention, but you could write here whatever you want. Book or file or whatever. We're going to go to our spreadsheet app and then get active spreadsheet. That's my worksheet. And then we go to our spreadsheet. Here we just have one spreadsheet. So it could be our active spreadsheet, and that's okay. So we could say in our worksheet, let's go to our active sheet. We could call it by name if we want. We'd get sheet by name, but I think for now it works. Then for this first step, we're just going to get the data with get data range. Let's get this first one, and our event description or name is going to be this A2, and then our starting date will be B2, and then we could say that the end date is this B2 plus 1 hour, or an hour and a half, or 2 hours, whatever you want, or maybe half an hour. And then at the end, we're going to add these two. So let's add event name. This is going to be our spreadsheet, get range, and we could name it if A2, or we could say that is the second row and the first column is the same. And very important to say get value. The same for our starting date. It would be our spreadsheet, get range, but now this is in our second row, but second column, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, second column. Get value, and that's it. Then in our event creation, we're going to change this with event name, and we're going to change the starting date with this variable starting date. And the thing we have to do, this is where the headaches begin, and it's starting to work with dates. Maybe some of you do better with this, but sometimes it confuses me a little bit. The date manipulation. Let's create this ending date, where we are going to create a new date, and in this new date we're going to have the starting date. I don't know if this has changed recently in Sheets, because normally the date, it was easily identified as a date. Right now, if you look at this variable, at this date that is getting right here, it's an object, but it could be a text object or a date object. So what I've found out that works the best is converting this starting date to a date object. So we could change this starting date to date, and then here we could say the starting date, it's a new date object having this date object that you got from Sheets, and the same with the ending date. The only different thing is that at the end we're going to have this ending date and set the hours. We could get the hour of the starting date and then add 1 hour. Let's change this to a variable. So here we could say starting date, get hours, and add 1. Here I missed the parentheses. So here again, here is starting date, and the ending date would be ending date. Let's see if this works. Again, we just connected to Google Sheets. We got the event name, we got the date, and from this date, we did a couple of lines to change, to have a starting date and an ending date 1 hour after the starting date. See if it works. It's going to ask me permissions again, because last time I gave permissions to Google Calendar. Now it's asking me permissions for Google Sheets. It seemed to work. Let's see. So it worked. It created the event from 8 to 9 a.m. It started 8 a.m. and here we said that it was just an hour. It was just 1 hour. If I could change this variable and say here, for example, I could create a global variable that could be named event duration, for example. This could be 2 hours, and then I could change this to event duration. Do it again. Here we have it, but it lasts 2 hours. Or I could have it in minutes and then do a simple multiplication. It's not that hard. Okay, so I'm missing one thing. I'm going to add the location and the speaker. For this, I need to create an object of options that this create event method allows. So let's give it a comma, and then I have, this is really annoying, this pop-up, but I haven't been able to remove it. Maybe with escape we could do it. but it always appears. There may be a way to remove it, but I haven't found it. So here in the options, you could include, for example, the location. You could say location and the column, and we already have the location here in the third row, third column. So I can add a new one that's called location. It's the same as above. Spreadsheet, get range in the third column, and then get value. Here we will just change it to location. Finally, I could say guests, and here I could add my speaker. Again, I don't have it here, so I'm going to add it. Speaker, S get range, but in the fourth column. Okay, I think we're ready. We can do a last thing here. There is this send invites option. I would set it to true, and that's it. Let's run it one last time. If we go to the event, I can see that I have a location now, the room 1, and then I have one guest. And if we go to my Gmail, I could see I have the introduction because I send it to myself through an alias. Okay, so one last thing we can do is create additional fields once the event is created. For example, I could place the date when the event was created, or just put a check, just say it was created. Say once he creates this event, we can say here successfully created or generated. So we can have some status here in this column. Let's call it event status. With this same ss.getRange, but we're going to put set value in this fifth column. So once the event is created, we're going to set ss getRange, the fifth column, set value, and we can put whatever we want. And we can use this event created here in a checkbox, data validation. We're going to select checkbox, and here we're going to say use custom cell values. The checked is event created, and here we can have it empty if we want. Let's give it reject input and save. Here we don't have anything, but if we give it here a play, again it's creating multiple events. So maybe for a future video it could be useful to have a button to eliminate all the events. And here it changed the status to event created. One last thing I'm missing is that here this is a new calendar, so I don't have any more events, but maybe it could be useful to have a specific calendar for this event. So this I could create it with script, but I'm going to create it manually and then show you how to connect a specific calendar with these events we're creating. So I could say here in my calendars, here in other calendars, I'm going to say add another calendar, and I will say create new calendar. This is going to be Google Sheets conference. To create it, okay, I have it here, and then I could look at the settings, and here at the end I can have the calendar ID. This is the one I'm going to use to copy it, and the only thing that's going to change in my code is that in calendar app I'm not going to create it directly here in create event, but first I'm going to choose a calendar. So I could say calendar app, I could say get calendar by ID. I already have my ID, so in quotations I'm going to paste it. Maybe I could call it calendar, and then I could bring this up here, maybe in our global variables. And then here, I'm not going to do it from calendar app, but from calendar. So here I'm going to hide my default calendar, and then I'm going to play our script, and here it is. created in our new Google Calendar. So the thing that's missing is that we can loop to create all the events that we have here. We could do this in multiple ways, some more efficient than others. The easier one is just to do a for loop, and the only thing we're going to change is the row. We start in the second row and we end in the 8th row. This is why I created it in the first place this way. So it's easy. We're going to change the 2 for a variable that will first be 2, then be 3, then be 4, and to 8th, or to whatever the number of your events. It could be 3 or it could be 50. So here we're going to create our for loop with an I starting in 2, and then I is going to go until this Google script method called getLastRow. So ss dot getLastRow. You have to be very careful with this type of thing, this checkbox, because when you have this checkbox in multiple rows, then the getLastRow is going to identify the last row as being the last one where it finds the checkbox. In our case, we solved it having this unchecked checkbox being nothing. So it's like the same as having nothing. But normally when you create a checkbox, by default, it says here false. So it has a value, even if it's false, but it has a value. So if you drag it down, then the getLastRow is not going to work well. Just a side note. Here I don't think we're going to have any problem. So just say getLastRow, and that's it. And lastly, we're going to add it's going to be moving in a one-by-one basis, or in a one-by-one step. We can add all this code. In the for, we're going to format this a little bit better. And then we're going to change this to by an I. As easy as that. I think we don't need anything else. So let's try it. I'm going to erase this event we created. Before trying it, I noticed I had here the dates wrong. When I drag it down, here is January 8th, January 9th. So I'm going to change this. Now we can try it again. So let's run it. It's taking a long time, so I think this is a good sign. So here we have it. Introduction to Sheets 8 to 10, room 1. Here it is. Then Introduction to Google Apps Scripts 9 to 11. That's it. And the other ones we have here. Okay, so I think we managed to do it. One last thing I want to include is that if I hit play again, then it's going to create all the events one more time. What happens if I have a new event? So let's have another last minute event. If I run again my script, it's going to create again all the events. I want it to create just the event that doesn't have this checked. Let's drag this down and let's uncheck this one. So I just need to create a condition that it just create the event if this is not checked. So here, again, it's just another line. I need to read the 5th column. I'm going to name it created. So if this variable created is not this event created, if it doesn't say event created, then do all this stuff. And if it does say event created, then don't do anything. Let's format it. And I think that should work. So it's going to loop through all the events and see which one doesn't have this event created status. And in that case, it's going to create the event. Let's save and run. Let's see. And here it didn't create duplicates of my event, and then it created a new event. This is what I wanted. One last thing we could do is create a menu or a button that executes the script from our sheets. So we don't have to always go here to Tools, Script Editor, and click Play, because it's not very user-friendly, let's call it. So there are multiple ways to do this. We're going to create here a function called menu creation without arguments. And then in this function, we're going to call spreadsheet app, then get UI, that it's the user interface with the parentheses, and then we have two options, or create the add-on menu or create the menu. Let's create a menu, give it a name, call it custom, and from this same menu we can add an item. We only need one item. The item has two parts: the name it's going to show in the menu and the function it's going to call. We only have one function where we are going to generate all events. Then we give it a comma, and the function it's going to call is this one, the only one we have. You copy paste it without the parentheses. Lastly, we add the menu to the UI, the parentheses, and that's it. We're going to save, and we're going to test it. Here you see that we have custom, we have the generated events, and if we play it, it will generate events, but we don't have any available events, so it will not generate anything. So the last thing we're going to do is that this menu creation function executes every time this file is opened. So we're going to go to our triggers, add a new trigger, we'll select the menu creation function, and we'll tell it that it will execute on open every time the file opens. I'm going to save it, and that's it. We can refresh this file and make sure that the custom menu always opens when the file opens. One last thing we can do is that here in the add item we can also include emojis. Sometimes it helps. These symbols or icons may help, such as here you can see that many of the menus have an accompanying icon that helps us understand what does the function do. So we can go here, look for a calendar emoji, copy it, and here before the generated event we can paste it. We'll save it. We can run the menu creation so we don't have to refresh the file, and you can see we have it here. So I think now that's it. We have a very basic event generation system. We can optimize it. We can, for example, in the next video, we could have the ability to eliminate one event or delete all the events, or modify one specific event, or move the events from one hour to another. I don't know. There are many possibilities. I'll just leave it running while I have some comments, and then we can go on to part 2. So thank you so much. You can find the template file and the code in the Patreon page. And if you wish to follow the development of these and other projects, as well as specific and most importantly practical Google Sheets tips, you can subscribe to the channel below. Thank you again, and see you the next time.